it's lovely to see you, Tina, and thanks for coming to speak to me today about your private psychology practice, which has been growing like crazy, I know. So I just wanted to have this opportunity to kind of share your journey and your story a little bit around how you've grown your psychology practice. And of course, you are just coming to the end of Practice Accelerator 4, which was our pandemic special Practice Accelerator, because the pandemic kicked off in the middle of it and we had to kind of adapt around that. So it's been a bit of a trial of fire for us all, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us a little bit about your background and then what kind of led you to kind of pivoting your practice and coming into Practice Accelerator.
Yeah, so I qualified in 2011, and then from that point, I was in and out of the NHS, locuming. I did some work in the third sector. I had 2 babies, kind of within the space of 2 years. And I realized very quickly that working in a 9 to 5 and all the strains of working in the NHS just wasn't working for me. And my husband kind of just sat with me and says, look, you've got to rethink this because you're just burning yourself to the ground. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. And he was very much encouraging me at that point, way back in 2014, to start looking into private practice.
Right.
And it wasn't an option that I had even considered, so for me it was just like, no, I'm a diehard NHS person, and that's how it's going to be. I was trained there, and I'm going to say all of this stuff. And I quickly realized that actually this isn't working for my lifestyle. So I went into private practice, just picking up cases here, there and everywhere, and within a kind of gradual space of time I realized that actually this is feeling like the NHS in a way. I'm still working for other people. They're telling me what cases to take on.
Right.
And I needed to just step away and have a think about what is it that I want to work on. And it took some time for me to figure out what my why was.
Yeah.
And I realized that when I looked back at my why, it was always to give back to my community, to bring psychology to the South Asian community.
Yeah.
And that was my point where I thought, well, I can't do this alone, because I feel like there's nobody else really out there that's having these conversations. I didn't know where to turn. And I kind of saw what you were doing, and I thought, well, let's just start somewhere and let's just see if I can do this. Is this a possibility? And what I quickly learned was, yes, it is a possibility. Of course it is.
Yeah, and I've remembered that actually you and I did coaching before you joined Practice Accelerator, didn't we? That was only last summer. Oh my gosh, you've really been on a journey since then.
Yeah. So I think I contacted you around September, October time, and I was feeling very stuck. And I said to you, I really want some coaching like now.
Yes. Yes. I remember.
And you just helped me to get back into that space of not thinking about what I'm in right now, kind of transporting me into a different world. And that felt really alien to me. It felt like I can't even think like this. And what Practice Accelerator has done is it's gently brought these concepts and ideas into fruition. It's really done it in a helpful way, rather than feeling like I've got to do everything all at once. And it's those kind of, it's a drip feeding, isn't it? That I think is the most powerful thing, because like you said, it does feel overwhelming, because I was hugely institutionalized. I was told that this is how it should be done, and this is how you should practice as a psychologist, when actually we've got so much more to offer. And I've always had this innate desire to be pioneering, leading, innovative. That's been inside me. And as we were discussing before that, I love bringing people together. I love collaboration. I love learning. So that passion's always been there. And since the Practice Accelerator, I've just honed in on those skills. I've just done what I do, and I've trusted that process. So I think that's been the crucial part, really.
And it's amazing to me because I'm just thinking back now. So I remember when we started with the coaching, obviously you were really successful with Therapy Sense because you had, associates working with you, and your practice has always been full. So it's not been a case of, I need to get more clients through the door, because that was never the problem. But what I remember is, and this is where you're an absolute queen, you don't hang about actioning things that you think of. So you're the one who, I remember us having a discussion, and you're like, yeah, I just started this Instagram account called the Brown Psychologist, and before I know it, it's like got 2,000 followers, and it's just gone absolutely wild on there. So am I remembering it right, that literally it was just less than a year ago when you started the Brown Psychologist? That's amazing that has, but that, I think, if I'm going to reflect on that almost, as because my other side of my business is around talent development. So if I think about what's happened there, is you've really tapped into some of your kind of core strengths as well as your values, and got those in alignment, and that's just really kind of powered this takeoff. So so you joined Practice Accelerator, and now can you tell us what you're up to now? Because let's fast forward a little bit through that journey and just give people an overview of what you're up to right now.
Yeah, so I feel like I've almost gone 360 on my idea, but I think that it's always been there. So I know I wanted to work with my community, which is the South Asian community. It was just really trying to narrow it down into who was my ideal kind of client, who do I want to work with. And the two areas of kind of passion are South Asian people and birth and, parenthood and all of that stuff, because I feel like that within the mothering or birthing circles, that Black and Asian voices are never really there. We don't hear them. We don't really fully appreciate the kind of cultural differences that occur. And, having reflected on my own experiences of having had two children, I kind of felt like that there was nothing out there that was talking to me. I felt like I was just confused and lost and just finding my way. So what I'm doing at the moment is I am building connections and really just getting my head around how can I create something for my community, specifically for my community, with regards to some sort of package or program where I'm going to help parents to be who are from the South Asian community to feel like they are more empowered at the point of once they've had the birth and had their baby, because I feel like that I want to do prevention rather than cure. I want to kind of honor our culture and our cultural rituals, but also making sure that we've got some real evidence-based practices and trying to marry them up, but also at the same time giving the voices to these people who often don't feel like they have a voice.
And I mean, that's interesting, because what it shows as well is, and I think this is the case whenever you're kind of growing and innovating and breaking new ground with a psychology practice, there's always a kind of range of projects in progress. Obviously, Therapy Sense is still ongoing and still very well established. That's like, there and very solid. Brown Psychologists had this real kind of big development phase, and actually is looking pretty developed now. And I know that you do a lot of connection and collaboration through that, and you've got your Facebook group, and that as a brand almost has really kind of intensified. And then there's the kind of in progress, in development, that's almost like your R&D phase within your practice, right? And I think there's always those phases, things will, at some point you might, I don't know, decide to hand over some part of it and then something else will come to maturity, something else will be, getting solid, and another piece will be in research and development. So it's a really useful insight into what that looks like in your practice right now.
It's not, I think people have the assumption that it's quite linear and it's kind of like start, beginning and end. Actually, it is like a tree that just grows, and you know,
Yeah.
it just sprouts, and it's beautiful. And I think that in my head, before doing all of this, I felt like it's like start, middle, end, and just carry on or
Yeah.
whatever. But actually, there is something about trusting the process, letting it be organic,
Mm.
um, and you know, the work will come. There's something that just
Yes.
always happens about that. You know, the
Yeah.
work will
Yeah.
come. Like you know, you don't realize the by putting yourself out there how much you attract. You know, and I still struggle to kind of get my head around that. But when I have conversations with people on Instagram or Facebook,
Yeah.
they're like, they say to me, "You don't know how powerful your voice is." I'm like, really, really, you know, and it's nice to kind of get that feedback. But again, the biggest thing is you want to give whatever's in here and get
Yeah.
it out there. And I think that's the bit that, you know, is the most important bit, and to feel brave enough to do it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And if you know, I say this all the time, but one of my joys with Practice Accelerator is being inspired and humbled by the people that I work with. And I always learn so much from you guys as well. So I'm looking at, you know, how you show up on social media and on Instagram, and how, you know, some of the others are showing up on Instagram. Like, yeah, I should do more of that too. You know, but we're all kind of learning from one another, and that's what it means to be in a collaborative community, right?
Mm.
That's what it means. So yeah, okay, perfect. What I would love to know about is, okay, what have been your highlights in this journey? So not only, you know, just with reference to Practice Accelerator, but over the last year of kind of growing and developing your practice. What have been the highlights and what have been the biggest challenges?
Oh wow. I don't know if I've got like specific points, but I think that there's been this sort of bubbling that has been happening.
Mm,
And maybe I've had to stop, or something has happened, or I've had a conversation where I think, oh my gosh, look how far I've come. This was
wow.
just an initial idea, and now look at it. It's actually a thing that people can relate to. You know, this concept. Um, and I think I feel like that the highlight actually is coming to fruition now, because I feel like I can shed the old layers of what I used to be as a psychologist,
Yeah.
in terms of working with, you know, most people, you know, as this very generalist psychologist. And actually I can shed that and say, you know what, this is who I really want to work with, and I can, because these people are coming to my door.
Yeah, that's
That for
so
me has been
powerful.
a huge confidence booster. And small things like being able to raise my fees, and people are still okay with that. Small things like that I feel like are huge, um you know, kind of milestones.
Yeah.
And things like people believing in my projects and passions and my kind of aims. You know, when I speak to people, they're like, yes, yeah, oh my gosh, you should so do this, you should so do this. And it's like, by having these conversations, it feels like that it's not just me that feels this way. Actually, this is going to be more than just me, and
Mm,
that's powerful,
mm,
you
mm.
know.
You've
um,
just, so I was like, what you've reminded me there is, I think, in terms of what I'm seeing in terms of the trajectory of psychology practices on this kind of growth path, is that almost like that first phase is about really stepping into your value and owning your value. And
mm,
then because that becomes very powerful, and the power kind of builds as a crescendo, I think, and then you have to step into the power. You know, you and I were just talking about what it means for women leaders, for example, to step into power, you know, before we started this interview. And I think those two things are kind of sequential almost.
mm.
We need both of them, but it seems like if we can step into our value and really own our value, there's an element of building the momentum with that, and that translates into stepping into power. And then we've got to figure out what that looks like. which is what we're figuring out now.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. It is really exciting because it feels like it's rocket fuel.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, I could do anything. I feel like I can do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And through that, what would you say has been your challenge that you've had to approach or overcome?
So as you know, I was in this sort of process of wanting to buy a franchise and be part of this franchise.
Yeah.
And that was my sort of, in my head, it was my way of creating some sort of safety. And I think that was my old me. Old me was holding on to this sense of, what if it fails? What if it fails? What if it fails? I need something to fall back on. And having gone through a process of almost having these stabilizers, and then the stabilizers wobbling, and I had to make the decision, do I keep the stabilizers and try and develop the Brown Psychologist, or do I take these stabilizers off once and for all? And sadly, the choice I was forced to make that decision. And I knew in my gut, and having had a conversation with you about that, that I had to take the stabilizers off.
Yep.
And that was a real challenging point because I felt so physically moved by that process. But in my heart of hearts, having spoken to you, it just reinforced exactly why I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked back. So it was hard because I kind of went really down and like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm taking these stabilizers off. I'm scared. I'm so scared.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that I felt that you encouraged me to just keep pedaling.
Yeah.
And I'm pedaling and I'm balancing. Yeah.
That's a brilliant analogy. And something I've been through that period of time myself, and I was fortunate to have a good coach as well at the time who said the same thing to me. And I think that's what we all do for one another, right? So someone did that for me, I did that for you, you will do that for someone else, and that's how we kind of pay it forward all the time. And what I loved, I guess, in that, so my reflection on that session a little bit was that I think you and I created space for that little still voice inside you to speak up and say, no, this is the way. Yeah, so I feel emotional now thinking about it. Yeah. I remember a similar kind of time in my practice. I'd been a bit like you were describing there. I'd been doing a lot of work, and I had people calling me all the time asking me to do associate work on running assessment and development centres. I could fill up my whole year running them, and it was unfulfilling for me. Not the people are always wonderful, but just running through the same process time and time again, and creativity and innovation are some of my biggest strengths, so it really wasn't harnessing those things. And there is always that point where you have to let go of the trapeze to grasp onto the next trapeze, right? There's always that jump, and that jump is scary, and you can carry on swinging on the trapeze forever. At some point you gotta let go. That's the other one.
Yeah, it did feel like that, that real, can I do this? And it was such a deep moment that I'd never thought that I would feel. Like, I just genuinely, and it's bizarre because I don't know if I told you, but there was something about this like ancestral voice that came for me, and since then it's just made me cement it even more that this is why. I feel like I could almost hear my grand's voice. I feel it was bizarre because obviously she's not here anymore, but there was something there.
Well, my IFS training would say, that's your grandmother's part speaking.
Yeah.
Our ancestral gifts.
And I've been trying to make sense of that. And actually, what I know is that my great grandma was a healer. She was a healer using goddess spirits, spiritualism.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, do you think that's what it is? Like there's something in my bloodline where we actually heal, like we actually help people heal using some sort of, and I just thought, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something, I need to be doing this important work to help
Yeah.
women, mothers heal.
Yeah. Yeah. There is something about patterns that flow through generations, I think. I've only found out recently I thought all my family were from like the same neck of the woods in the UK. Turns out, going on ancestry.com, doing my DNA and all the rest of it, that actually in the turn of the 20th century, there were a bunch of them that all moved overseas. And so I've got loads of like second, third and fourth cousins in America.
Wow.
And I mean, I didn't even know about that, but I've been working in, global mobility for multinational companies for 17 years now. And it's so funny. It's just so funny. The echoes through the generations. Why does that happen? I have no clue, but it's amazing. And it's powerful as well, tapping into it.
Yeah, because it forms part of your story, doesn't it?
Exactly. Story is very powerful, as we know. So, okay, last couple of questions. What would be your biggest learning point, therefore?
My biggest learning point would be so there was something you said, I remember, in one of the coaching sessions where you allow yourself space, you create a space and you allow yourself to go inwards, because we don't do enough of that. And we talked about creativity, and actually what I was finding was I wasn't giving myself the space to be creative. Because we're so busy just trying to make ends meet. We're too busy trying to run the practice, and so I think there's something about creating space and being okay with going inwards.
Yeah.
That for me was a kind of really powerful moment.
Yeah, and I think it is super powerful, that as well, because apart from the fact that all that alignment comes out of that, so good old Carl Rogers organismic valuing process, right? It's like all this stuff that gets us in alignment. I think the other thing is that a lot of traditional business and marketing is about the analysis of the external market. And I think we pick up this sense that we've got to, and I've had conversations with people where it's like, how do I know what's the right topic to choose for my niche, and like as an out there thing. Now we need to have empathy for the people that we want to work with, and so that's a kind of external reference, if you like, but it's got to be connected to whatever's in here, right? Or else we don't have empathy. It's about that connection.
Yes.
So I think that's really important, especially for psychologists, especially in private practice, because we bring a lot of ourselves to our practice. I think that's the other paradigm shift, I would say. We're not in an ivory tower. We're here in the weeds with everybody in private practice. That's what we're there to do, right? Bring all that stuff from the ivory towers and be in it with people, and then maybe reflect that back to the folks in the ivory towers and say, hey, look, this is what's going on down here with real people and real lives. And so I see you doing that very strongly with what you're at, what you're up to at the moment. Okay, what would be your one word of advice, or a few words of advice for fellow psychologists in private practice?
Don't be afraid to be authentic. I think that's the one thing that when you work in an institution gets stripped away. That real.
What do you mean by authentic in that respect then?
Your human self.
Right.
I feel like, having been on Instagram for a short period of time, I can see which accounts are doing really, really well, and I can see which accounts aren't doing so well. And what's powerful is that authentic accounts, they just rock it, and they don't have to be professionals with mental health, kind of qualifications. These are people relating to people.
Yeah,
that's what that's what creates that connection. And it's kind of going on from the back of what you were talking about just before, that actually, if we try and step away from this fear of being human, I mean, yeah, we've got to be careful how much we share, but show your humanness, that is what people will relate to. Yeah. That is what people will buy into.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and psychology is psychology private practice is fundamentally relational, right? It's about the connection between people. And I think I love what you say about the fact that we get a little bit institutionalized. And, okay, there might be reason. It's almost inevitable in huge organizations and institutions anyway. But yeah, I think, what I really reflect on with you is having seen you. So step into vulnerability in a really powerful way as well. There's a kind of paradox of vulnerability, which is that it's really powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
And being able to do that is, I think it's what there's so much unlearning for us to do as psychologists to do that. It's a kind of ongoing thing. Perfect. So any last words? Thank you so much for all of this. This has been amazing. And I just want to give you, perhaps also tell us about where we can find you and any kind of last words of encouragement.
Yeah. I think for anybody who wants to step outside the traditional kind of private practice and really wants to do something with their heart and soul, you need somebody to walk that walk with you, I think, because it's uncharted territory. You're walking, like, I love the analogy you gave me, which is you're walking through a forest and there's no sort of roadmap for this. You really have to just kind of, feel your way through this, but you've got somebody alongside you to do that. And, we're lucky enough, we've got a whole bunch of us walking alongside us, and it just feels so much more safer and so much more, more comfortable in that way, rather than doing it alone. And I feel like that process has been probably the best gift I've given to myself to have. And I'm all up for community. That's part of exactly what I believe in. And when you've got a community of amazing, passionate people who believe in the same things as you, it just feels like I'm not doing this alone. We're all doing this. So yeah, if you're questioning it, if you're considering whether you should do it, just do it. Just do it. It's the best gift you can give yourself, as almost like internal CPD as well as this external thing. Yeah, I really believe that. I feel like that this has been the best thing I've done for myself, but even more so than any other training, EMDR training or whatever. I feel like that. I feel this is for life. So yeah, if you're thinking about it, do it.
Awesome. And where can we find you?
So I'm mainly active on Instagram. So I'm on there as @BrownPsychologist. I'll also be, hopefully, fingers crossed, releasing a podcast as well called Brownology in September. So that's going to be really exciting. Yeah. So this is going to be sharing South Asian voices. We talk about all the issues that affect us, but with a psychological mental health perspective as well. So that'll be so cool.
It is going to be absolutely spectacular. Thanks so much, Tina, and see you in the group, dear.
Okay.
Take care, lovely. Bye.
Okay, bye.